When you have your girls, you're never alone. You get together for coffee, maybe to work out, or just to laugh. We created Hey Girl, just for you. Can't wait for you to join us.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Hey Girl. I'm your girl, Kim with an E, and this is episode 40. If you're just joining us, welcome. Hey Girl is a safe space where you can share your experiences and be affirmed. Let's face it, life can be complex and sometimes overwhelming. That's why we believe in the power of conversation because knowing you're not alone is what helps us get through. Would you agree? I think
Hi,
you would. Yes.
yes. I jumped in. Hey, how are you?
Yen with me today. How's it going?
It's going really good. It's good to be here. How are you?
I'm great. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't remember the year 2021.
I don't think so.
Yeah, the last time you were
Yeah.
on, it was back in December. So
Right. Right.
welcome back. One of
Thank
the favorite
you.
everyone. She is our
Yes.
newest co-host, and just so glad to have you on. Say hello to us in the comments. Hey, Marissa Morris. Hey, girl. Hey, I see you out there. Hope everyone has had a great week. Happy MLK weekend. I know it has been a an interesting past couple of weeks, actually. I feel like every week it's a new adventure in America. But as you know, our our theme for this month is it's a new day. So in spite of all the craziness of 2020, we are looking forward to 2021 being a positive new year. Hey Ebony, I see you.
And Kim. Hey, Kim. With an
Hey,
I.
everybody's chiming in. So how are you guys making it a new day? What is new in your life and how what positive changes have you been making? Yen, I've been asking
Yeah.
everyone what if any New Year's resolutions you've made this year. Did you?
So I did it a little different this year. I didn't have a New Year resolution.
Mm,
And not to make it sound so morbid or anything, but my resolutions really started when we started with the pandemic.
uh,
Just an opportunity for new things to take place, like purging. I am
mm,
purging. I am getting into the back of the cabinets and really getting rid of things that I don't
yeah.
need, things that we're just holding on to that are weighing us down, right?
Right.
And so that has sort of been my thing and my resolution, if I had to sort of state it, would be just to keep it going because I'm not done yet.
Oh
Yeah,
man. It is. It's not a one-time thing, right? That
it's
whole
not.
purging, it's something you really have
Yeah,
to do ongoing. And I'm with you. I actually did start that in 2020 as well, still
right.
doing it. And I think 2021 has given me sort of a more focused mission. Like I need to really
Yeah,
continue what I started
yes,
and more of
yes,
it. Let
yes,
go, let
yes.
go all the stuff.
Right,
Absolutely.
right.
Yeah. Hey, I
Um,
Karen out there and Audrey. Just want to say hello to them real quick. And Brandon. Hey, Brandon. Welcome, welcome. Hey, Alva. I see you there as well. So good to see you all. So yeah, I'm with you, Yen. It's all about
yeah.
making it a new day. And as I've said before, we don't have to wait for the new year to do that.
We don't. We don't. 20 was a year by itself, and I didn't expect that much would change in 21, at least in the beginning. But I know
Yeah.
that I went through a change
Hmm.
starting from March, and so I just commit to seeing it through.
Yeah.
Trying to have that same influence over my children to not
Yeah.
overbuy, not over, just not to hold on to things. Like
Yeah.
just what you need is what you need to keep. And beyond that, let's just part, part from it. Yeah,
Really a spiritual thing, isn't it? Because it's
it is.
like all the things that you bring into your space that ends up just filling the
Mhm.
space, but not really feeding your soul.
Not at
It's
all.
draining. And so when you're able to purge those things and really just hold on to what matters, it's
Yeah,
amazing the difference
yeah,
that it makes.
absolutely.
And it's interesting that you mentioned the whole buying thing because I actually had come across a Reader's Digest magazine a while ago, and I saw this. The cover of it was a couple went on a no spending. They did a no spending experiment. I was like, oh, I need to read that. This thing has been sitting around my house for speaking, holding on to stuff. I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna read it. So I'm like, oh, I've been meaning to read this thing. I was cleaning up the other day. I found this. I was like, let me read this article so I can then throw the magazine away. Whatever. But the article was about a family who decided to do an experiment. They were realizing that they were in this spending kind of cycle, just buying, buying, buying. Everything they did involved, spending money, and they decided to see how long they could go without spending money. And they decided to commit to a month-long commitment to living life without buying anything, unless it was an absolute emergency necessity, but it was just like no spending for a month. And I was like, oh, can you?
So did they buy their groceries and that was it for the month? I have boys, so I'm thinking food.
Well, they did say that the goal was to not have to even buy groceries unless it was just
Okay.
absolutely like maybe a few fresh items that they wanted to replenish, but just basically to eat through the stuff they had already. Because if
That's
you're honest,
true. Yes.
your pantry that you could just pull out some cans you can
Yes.
open, boxes,
Yes.
some things that probably need to be purged. Anyway, they did that. They said they didn't like stockpile ahead of this either. They said we're gonna eat out what we have and try our best not to have to spend. And they found all kinds of creative ways to do entertainment
Yes.
and they had a little 4-year-olds. They were like panicking at moments because the kid needed, entertaining, and they just had to find creative ways. They spent a lot of time together. They went on a lot of
Yeah.
walks. They
Yeah.
and they found creative ways to not spend, and they became more resourceful. The husband is the one writing the article. He talked about a dilemma they had with like a plumbing issue, and he was torn between, well, can I justify spending money on this? I'm gonna call the plumber, but instead he tried to do it himself, fix it himself. He went on online and found a hack and was able to fix the plumbing issue. So it's like it forced them to really,
Right.
find ways to handle things and to do things without immediately just reverting to spending, buying, and so forth.
Right.
And I just thought, wow, that's really commendable. How many of you out there could go a whole month without spending? They discovered was just how much they had been spending, right? It
Yeah.
really made them
Yes.
realize
Right.
how easy it was just to do that. And so I was like, well, if we're talking about resolutions and starting afresh, maybe we should look at some of the habits and some of the things that we do that
Mhm.
that could probably be tweaked and benefit us if we just, I guess, practice a little discipline and
Right.
really prioritize what's important rather than just sort of falling back to those same old habits. But yeah,
I'm willing to try it. I'm willing to try it. I think we should present it to the men of the house. I think we should.
actually, honey, I wouldn't have to convince my husband too
Oh,
much
that's
because
true.
I'm king, okay? So he would
And
also,
yeah.
if the
And his
girl would
yeah.
revolt, my children would probably move out. But we'll talk about it. We'll have a family meeting and see if they're open to it. But
Mhm.
there's the thing about resolutions is that it's a lot like putting together a list, like a bucket list of
Mhm.
things that you want to accomplish, things that you want to do, whether it's for this year or just at some point before your time expires, which of course you never know when that will be. So living a life that is more purposed and purposeful is certainly one of the things that I am striving towards. And what else do you have on your bucket list? I know that's one thing. The one thing on my bucket list is to just live a full life. But the other thing on my list, which is another, take me out of my comfort zone type thing, is I want to do more things that I maybe wouldn't necessarily want to do. So, things that take me outside of what's comfortable is another bucket list item, I guess you could say. I don't know about you.
Yeah.
You have some things on your sort of list. If you,
So I don't want to be uncomfortable. I haven't gotten to the point where I'm like make me just uncomfortable.
Yes.
I like safe, but I'm always amazed at individuals who have that within them, right? Individuals who are comfortable being uncomfortable. And
Mm-hmm.
I hope in years to come that I reach some level of being comfortable being uncomfortable. That's just honestly speaking.
I agree. I admire people who are able to just do and go and be and
Yes.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I doubt very seriously that my bucket list will look like other people's bucket list. Like mine, my comfort zone is like it doesn't take much for me to step out of it. Other people's is up here.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's certainly relevant to the guest that we have on today. She is
Yeah.
one who her comfort level obviously is like is just like stratosphere.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
We're so excited
Yeah.
to meet our guest for today. And Yen,
Yeah.
who is this
Yes.
amazing that we have with us?
I I am so excited to introduce Miss Claire Johnson. And Claire Johnson is a wanderer to all seven continents, all modern world wonders, all 50 states, and half the world's countries. She is a physician and a photographer, and both professions have afforded her some great opportunities around the world. Her proudest moments are not around the world, but right at home where she raised her daughter, Sinclair, who is a professional runner for Nike and training for the Olympic trials, and her son, Brian, who is a junior at the University of Florida and also in the running world, managing their cross country and track team. I met Claire yesterday and I am in awe. She's so amazing, and I can't wait for everyone to hear what she has to share with us.
Welcome to Hey Girl, Dr. Claire Johnson.
Dr. Claire
Thank you.
Johnson. Yes.
You have to be a little crazy and a little, and I love the way you said comfort zone. I don't know how. I thrive on being out of my comfort zone.
I
It
desire that.
it charges me. Drop me off in the middle of a third world country with one bag and three words in the language and let me go.
I
Gives
love it.
me so much anxiety. The thought of it. Just,
Oh man. So Claire, you describe yourself as a wanderer, but before we get into discussing that, where did
Yeah.
life begin for you? Who are you? Where were you born? Where were you raised? Share anything with us.
Right. I started as a mini wanderer. I was born in New York, but I just lived there the first 3 years of my life. And my dad was in the army. He's a retired army now. Both my parents are still married and live in Indianapolis. Then we moved to Germany. I was there so at 3 years old, I had my first passport. We lived in Germany, but traveled around Europe. And so I got accustomed to that. And then we came back to, my dad had been in the military for many years. We came back to Indianapolis and I grew up there. And I stayed there until I went to undergrad in medical school in Indiana. And then I needed a break from the snow. And speaking of Indiana, I want to say hi to Stacy, who I graduated high school with. She's watching. And it's really great how Facebook will connect you to people that you weren't necessarily that connected with in high school. So yeah, and we had so many commonalities now, and so that's been great. And so I got tired of the snow, and we moved to, my daughter was only 6 weeks old. We moved to St. Petersburg, Florida. I did my residency there in obstetrics and gynecology, and then 4 years there, and then practiced in Orlando for many years until I started being more of a wanderer again. So I'm a Gemini. I've had the stability, of course, but as one of my yoga teachers said, she said, you live the good life of stability, but you're kind of wound up, and when you need to break free, you need to embrace that and let your wings spread and fly.
Oh,
So
I like
I've had
that.
periods of that too.
I think that's an important distinction to make, right? Like we're
Mhm.
not all the same. We don't all have the same personality. We don't all have the
Right.
same drive and desire. So at the same time that we're admiring you, it's probably not in us, Yen.
And I certainly understand that travel is challenging, renewing passports and packing and losing luggage and just all the planning, and there's a lot that goes into that. And so I certainly understand like all sides of it. Not everyone is, you just have to find your passion and your purpose and where that is, and mine just happens to be a lot more places.
So I want to talk about all the places you've been, but also you're a physician. So are are you currently practicing, and how does that tie into all of the other things that you're doing?
For the last 2 years, I've worked remotely in consulting. And so now I'm able to have this remote life that I didn't have before. So I've had three phases basically in medicine. I had the traditional in Orlando and in practice and certain hospitals and all of that. Then I started traveling. So I have done medical missions in Kenya and in Chad,
Mm,
and I worked on the island of Saipan for 2 years, which is US, but next to Guam. And
mm,
so, and specifically when I was traveling there, I would go back and forth, and it was grueling at the time. I would have an assignment where I would work like 40 days in a row without any time off, delivering babies around the clock. But then when I
mm,
had time off, I'd have like almost 2 months off. So I would
mm,
leave and I would check off different, especially in Asia, I would check off multiple cities in Asia or countries in Asia um, on my way back to the US. And then I would spend that downtime traveling with my kids when they were out of school at college. And so I've had these three phases.
mm,
I also did medical missions in Bangladesh with the Rohingya refugees, and that was not only in medicine but also in photography. And
mm,
it's amazing the smiles that you can put on someone's face by
mm,
capturing that image and giving it to them, especially if it's something you can hand them. So I'd like to do the Fuji Instax, like the
mm.
Polaroid pictures, so they could have one. And the smiles, I would say, the smiles I could put on their face with photography was often much bigger than like, here I did a C-section. Here's your baby. Like, oh, thank you. But like, I take a
Wow.
picture. Like, here's a picture. Like, oh my gosh, it's just incredible the
Wow.
different ways that we can give back.
Oh wow, that is so
Wow.
interesting. They're more
Yeah.
excited about the picture than the baby.
Right, like, right, because
So
they
it's
see
the
a lot of
smile.
babies, but if
Yeah.
yeah, like the number of times that they've seen their actual image themselves is
Right.
not that often in their entire life. We take it for granted. We look in the
Wow.
mirror several times a day and on our phones and all of that, but being able to
Yeah.
see what you actually look like is, yeah, it's an innate human joy.
So how
Oh,
did you get into the photography? When did that come about and
It
how?
came about a few years ago. I've liked taking photos, but I noticed that I would get comments from photographers like, "Wow, nice composition," and capturing the images. I got a lot of feedback that I was doing it well without any training,
You had a
and
natural
certain things,
eye.
yeah, the way I would frame, I learned like retro that I was doing it in the rule of thirds, or I like to photograph like a person and then there's all this space and they're like, oh, that's negative space, and also my eyes were frame, and I really feel like that has a lot to do with medicine because I've been studying patients for years, and I'm visually examining, and some of it's landscape, but then also individuals too that I've been framing for so many years, and then I just put that behind the lens.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so amazing. But that's not all. So we have a physician, we have a world traveler, but then we also have one who is FAA certified drone pilot.
Yeah.
Claire, please tell me about. I'm curious to know how it
That's
came about.
it's a good it's a kind of a out of the comfort zone story. But I have a friend who is actually went to high school with him, Stacy, Channing Benjamin. So he um is a premier golf photographer, and he was using drones a lot, and I asked him about it, and I thought I could incorporate that into my photography. But then I started to look up the FAA certification, and it said that only 4% of all FAA certified pilots are women, and a fraction of that are African American women. I was like, sign me up.
Yes.
I was like, I love a good challenge, whether it's like, and you can't see where I am, but I'm in Flagstaff, Arizona right now, and I'm looking at the peak of Arizona, which is called Humphreys Peak. And this summer I climbed it. So we went from 9,000 feet to over 12,000 feet. And so I love any kind of getting out of my comfort zone, and whether it's physically, whether it's academically. So with the drone work, yeah, I was like, sign me up. I'm going to pass this test. And so I studied for a while, and it's, for me, it's very different. It's very technical, maps, and just a lot of the rules that are related to aviation. And I passed. And to use any commercial work for drones, you have to have your FAA license anyway, if I want to sell my images. And it's opened doors for me, though. So last year, instead of just using it for photography, Tennessee State University was looking for a drone pilot, and it was to do GIS. And so I'm now working under a contract with NASA and considered a NASA subject matter expert in drone work. So it opened doors. And that was really just started by me saying, oh, it's only 4% women and a handful of African American women. Okay, sign me up.
When you talk about being FAA certified to do drone work, I mean, some people have drones, right? I bought my husband a drone 2 years ago. You can fly it around the backyard, whatever. So, like, what's the difference between you as a certified drone pilot and the average Joe Blow who flies a drone and flies it around? You know what I'm saying? Like, what?
Right. The average person should ideally still know the rules, know where they can and cannot fly it, that they can't fly it over groups of people. They should still know the rules. But the difference is that you've tested on all the FAA rules, and you then agree to abide by the rules. But the main thing is that you're able to get contracts. You're able to get government contracts, or you're able to use it in commercial work. Like, all drone work used in real estate should all technically be FAA certified if you're selling images. So if you are all making any kind of profit from your drone work, then you should be FAA certified.
Got you.
Mm-hmm.
So that is so, I mean, thank you for that information. Like, I never know that.
Right. Yeah.
My husband's drone, and I guess we should kind of know that.
Yeah. And the rules are really important. They're really important. And they vary by country. So I've done drone work in different countries, and I have to get approval in those countries. And I've made some mistakes. So I got in Bangladesh, I did get approval ahead of time. In Dubai a year ago, my kids were laughing at me. We had a trip to Dubai a year ago, and I brought the drone with me. I really don't think I was going to fly it. Maybe I was going to fly it in Sharjah, one of the desert, one of the Emiratis. But I went through the airport, and they scanned everything, and boom, they were like, oh, you have a drone in there. And my drone is tiny, like the case is this small. But they said, you have a drone in there. And if you don't do a multi-day course with them and fly it in front of them, theirs is far more strict than the US, then you cannot fly that. You can't hold onto that drone, but they take very good care of it for you. So they took my drone, and they gave me a claim check. And on my return day to the airport, I was able to not only get the drone back, which was nicely packaged. I mean, they really take good care of it for you. And then they gave me, it was around the New Year of last year. And so they gave me this like little parting gift of like, Happy New Year, and their local cologne. And
very nice about it.
So it's kind of like, thank you for trusting us, to hold on to your drone while you were touring.
Wow. So I was going to ask you where the travel bug came from, but you kind of answered that already. I guess the next question that we would ask is, do you prefer, you mentioned you travel with your kids. Do you prefer traveling alone, or do you usually travel with someone, your kids or others? Like, how does it
I've
usually?
I've really enjoyed traveling with my kids because it just I get to share those experiences with them. We've been to Machu Picchu. That was, I think, our greatest. And even in one of my daughter's podcasts last year, they asked her about travel, and she said, that was one of her greatest experiences with going to Machu Picchu. But we've gone to Asia together, Thailand, Eastern Europe. So I really enjoy that. In general, it is a little bit more, even as teens, it's a little bit more challenging to travel with children. they still have, like my son, on the way to the airport in Miami to fly to Peru on our trip to Machu Picchu, I should probably say this, but anyway, he started crying in the car because he was so afraid of the altitude sickness. And I was
Oh,
like, son, we're going to Machu Picchu. You'll get over the altitude sickness. But I've enjoyed traveling solo too. I've traveled in all aspects, in relationship and friends, but I like solo. I like, especially the way I travel, because I like to pretty much capture every sunrise and every sunset. And I'm one of
mm,
those, even if it's a road trip, I'm driving, I see an incredible scene, I'm gonna back around and go back and stop and take pictures. And so not everyone necessarily likes to travel the way I travel. I shouldn't say I'll eat anything, but I'll try a lot of things once. Um, so not everyone has that same desire. So the most random thing I've eaten is bat in Palau. They have fruit bat as their delicacy. So I try. You can only try a little bit though, because you start to kind of mess with it, and it's a full bat, and it starts to fall apart. And I'm like, okay, let me just take one bite, just for official sake. But so I haven't minded traveling solo too. I traveled through, I think my most challenging, I love the word challenging instead of difficult or complaining or awful, or my most challenging trip was traveling through Chad on my own. It's
mm,
not it's not a place for tourists at all.
mm,
And I did study French for many years. So I had that, but it's French, it's Arabic, probably
Mm.
40 different tribal languages. So I could communicate a little bit. But yeah, I was volunteering there, but I was put on a bus in N'Djamena, which is the capital, and it was a like rickety, shaky bus, and like nice Ethiopian soap operas playing on the bus, and and we stop on the side, and everyone gets out, and it's just a field. And I was like, "What's everybody doing?" It was a bathroom break, so I quickly figured that out. But I, I've kind of liked the challenges of traveling solo when it's like there's no one else around to help you out. You're it.
Ah,
right.
Yeah.
So I have what about safety? Like it's when
Hmm.
you're planning your adventures around the
Hmm.
world. I know you do your research. I know where
Yes.
it's safe and not safe for women to travel.
Yes.
But is just talk a little bit about that.
Sure.
Maybe just
Sure.
share how you go
especially
about
talking about not
Exactly.
even knowing the language, right? Like, I feel like
that.
you're
Right.
vulnerable then too.
Right. Right. And there are several ways to get around that. Well, my main suggestion is that if you're in a country and you don't know the language, find someone who's college age, because they're probably like, if you find someone who's older, the 60s, 70s, they may not be multilingual. But if you find someone around, around 20 something, there's a good chance that they know a fair amount of English if you need that. Um, but safety in general, what I try to do is, the places I've traveled, I try to find a connection. So if there's a guide, and it's usually a recommendation. One of my main places that I've looked in the last few years is the Facebook page Girls Love Travel, because there are over 1 million women in that page. And I've seen some incredible things, like a woman who gets in a moped accident in Thailand and needs someone to come to rescue. And there are like 40 women in Thailand who all of a sudden say, I'll be right there to help you. So what,
Wow.
so I'll tell you specifically, like, I went to, now this is a very safe country, but I went to Bhutan. And in Bhutan, you need a guide. You can't, unless you're Indian, you can't travel there without a guide. And in many places I travel without a guide at all. I just do my research. But there you need, so I was like, well, I need a safe guide. I need someone I can trust. And then you have to wire them money ahead of time. They require $200 a day, but that includes housing, food, and your guide on the off season, and $250 a day during high season. But I thought, I'll find a guide through Girls of Travel, and then it'll be someone who another female has recommended. So that's been very, very helpful for me. I do try and register. I have sometimes registered with the U.S. Embassy, if that's that's helpful. I feel like I've been very fortunate because I've never had a problem. I've had a few hairy situations, and I can tell you one of the good things, one of the blessings we have as Americans is to be able to say we're American. So I was in a particular country, and it's a country where often you are stopped by the police and you are asked to pay a bribe, and I was told, don't pay the bribe, tell them, put me in jail and call my embassy. And just those words alone show you how lucky we are to be American, because you could be from many countries where that doesn't work at all. They don't care, but as an American, you can say that, and they just go on to the next person. But yeah, I've usually tried with travel, I've usually tried to find some safe connection, whether a friend of a friend, or again, a guide that another woman has recommended. And those have always been really helpful.
Wow. That's good. So, what has been your most memorable trip, would you say, of all the trips?
I'd say Antarctica. I called Antarctica a green screen vacation, a green screen trip, because it doesn't seem real. It just doesn't seem like this is actually happening in front of your eyes. So for Antarctica, you usually either sail out of Chile or you sail out of Argentina from this side of the world. And so I sailed out of Chile, and you sail 4 days through the Chilean fjords. Then you cross through the Drake Passage, which fortunately was very calm when I was there. And then you enter into Antarctica. And then, you're all excited when you just see your first iceberg, like, oh my gosh, but then it just gets better and better, and like bigger icebergs and more icebergs. And then you see the wildlife, and they call over this ship and they say, go out to the edge. There are humpback whales there. And I had seen in Sydney, I saw one humpback whale. In Vancouver, Washington, went on a whale watching trip, didn't see any. In Kauai, I saw, after diving, scuba diving, I saw 3 humpback whale. In Antarctica, you go out to the edge of the ship, there are 50 humpback whale. they're just all over the place. It's incredible. It's so amazing. And then we would tender on to the different landings in Antarctica, and the penguins, and they're stinky little things, but they're fun. But they have these so you look up in the mountain, and they have these penguin highways, they call them, and they tell you, stay away from the penguin highways, don't cross through them. And the penguins can come to you, but you should not walk to them. But these penguins come flying down their penguin highways, and you just think, what an incredible world. Like, we've all seen Nat Geo photos and videos and all that stuff, but it's like, oh my gosh, this is real. It was incredible. And it's the only trip that I've had that I witnessed people crying as we left, like like
Oh,
yeah, like in tears on our last day sailing out. There were several who were that they were going to miss the experience so much. Like, and we felt like, oh, we're leaving the animals, and the animals are like, please go. We don't want you down here too long. But it's amazing. It is, yeah. But and I know that Antarctica is a lot less accessible for many. So I'd say even in like Southeast Asia, Vietnam is incredible, and it's so reasonable, and so green, and the people, the food. And one of my other favorites is Bhutan. Bhutan is next to, I know everybody's talking about Bhutan, but it's next to India and Nepal. And to fly into Bhutan, you are in India first, and then you fly in, and they tell you to get a seat on the left side of the plane. And as you look out the left side, they tell you passed Mount Everest. And when it was a beautiful day, and it was so blue, and yeah. And I just saw my holy experience in India pop up, and it's now that we've been in this whole COVID world. I wondered, like, when will we get back to an experience like holy? So holy is several days in India in the spring, and inside the specific temples in Mathura and Vrindavan, and it is body to body and color, just throwing color here and throwing color there and shooting color. They have like liquid color, and the red doesn't come out of your hair for about 6 months. I had like memories of Holi for 6 months. Yeah. But the energy, the crowd, you feel like this is living. I mean, for me, and it is significantly out of people's comfort zones to get, because you are, like I said, you are just deep in bodies. But I had a really good guide. I felt safe. And it was one of the most incredible experiences of my life.
Wow.
So, yeah, I'm first of all, I'm really enjoying the passion that you have in describe. I feel like I'm there. But and I know that you're capturing all these amazing experiences, through your photography. But what's left? What other countries would you like to visit? Are there any left?
Yes. Oh my gosh, there's so many. I'll pick a different continent. Well, in South America, I've been to 7 of 12 countries, and if I don't make it to every single one, I would like to go to Bolivia. I want to go to the salt flats in Bolivia and La Paz. So that would be incredible. I want to experience the Northern Lights, which I know Northern Canada, but I'd like to go to Norway and experience the Northern Lights. I think that would be incredible. And I'd like to, then I think I've been to about 7 countries in the continent of Africa. I would definitely like to go back, and I'll tell you a funny 23andMe story. So I did my DNA test a little earlier, several years when 23andMe was like in their first year, but it was right before I was headed to Chad. So I thought, okay, while I'm there, I'll go to my country of origin. And so 23andMe, it said Ghana. And I'm so glad that I traveled to Ghana. And I went to the door of Cape Coast, and I went to the door of no return. And I mean, I would have wanted to go there anyway. I was very close to Nigeria, didn't go there. And so I went to Chad and went to Ethiopia. But I came back, and about 6 months later, 23andMe sent me this message like, oh, by the way, now that we have more samples and more cohort, your DNA has changed. Now your number 1 is Nigeria. And I was like, no, 23andMe owes me a trip. I thought I was going to, thank you. It was a great trip. But, now I definitely have to go back. I have to go to Nigeria.
Right. That is so funny.
Yeah.
As I see a lot of the comments coming up about all these different places. I feel like I feel like you have to know so much. I mean, I guess you have to do a lot of research ahead of time to even know where where you should go or where you might want to go or what it is that you would go see. But I'm also immediately thinking, for a lot of us, the thought of going to all these places is just, it seems so out of our reach, not just
Yeah.
because it's out of our comfort zone, but also like, how do you even do that financially?
Right.
In terms of
Right.
your work, getting off of work. I mean, some of us can't get a week off from work to go, to the beach,
Yeah,
much less,
that's true.
and
Right.
so for the average person, is it one of those things that you just have to be independently wealthy to enjoy, or is it possible to even, do this kind of travel? Um,
Mhm.
I don't
I
know.
think it's possible. It just depends on the country. So there are, you want to go reasonably, you can travel throughout Southeast Asia incredibly reasonably. So so the ticket there would cost the most, but you could stay in a gorgeous place. I've stayed in a gorgeous place in Bali for $25 a night.
Hmm.
Um, you get massages for $2 for two
Wow.
hours, and
Wow.
um,
Sign me up.
Same.
so, but there are countries that are very expensive. Switzerland, very expensive. Iceland has gotten very expensive.
Mm.
And so yeah, it kind of, one of the other things to do though, that I've done is with points, like I have credit cards but I pay them off every month, but the points, so you can really add up, or there are people who will then open, you kind of have to shift things, and be careful of your credit score, but you can open up, when you open up new credit cards and you get that nice big jam-packed amount of points. You can do that too. There are many ways. There are also, you can get into travel sites and they'll tell you about these oops fairs, where for a brief amount of time, they have the glitches in the airline system, and you could fly to Tokyo for $200 because it's a glitch fare. And so that fare is only going to be good for probably a half hour until they find out, and then they'll fix it. But they honor those. So there are many different ways of doing that. And a lot of the places I then checked off too, it's because I worked on the other side of the world, so I had a travel budget going back and forth. So there are, yeah, plenty of ways of figuring it out. But I certainly understand that, yeah, for everybody, it's not even feasible. And so I also love our own country. It is incredible. It
Yeah.
is beautiful. There are, especially out west. For me, I'm a mountain person. And I grew up in the Midwest, but it's always in me. But I'm a mountain person, and there are places that compare. There's a picture right now. That
Mm.
picture, that's Iceland. It's not Iceland. It's outside of Portland in Waukena Falls, but that could be Iceland. You have
Yeah.
black volcanic rock, you have green moss, you have waterfalls, and you can get there far more reasonably. And then, once you're in Oregon, you can drive up north to in Washington to North Cascades National Park. It looks like Banff in Canada. You don't have to. Banff has gotten very, very expensive. You don't have to go to Banff. You can go to North Cascades in Washington.
Yeah.
When I checked off Petra, well, the funny thing, I always like to say that looks like that and that looks like that. When I checked off Petra and I wandered through Petra, I was like, this looks like Zion. It looked like Utah. Like, you can go on a road trip and you can check off multiple countries just in the US. No passport, far
Yeah.
more reasonable travel. Yeah, and just drive from place to place.
Yeah, those pictures are beautiful. It looks like
Yeah.
you're in another country. We don't even realize what we have. And I guess that's
Right.
really relevant now since we're in the middle of COVID. You're not able
Especially.
to travel out of the country
Yeah,
like we.
absolutely. Especially with COVID,
Mhm.
it's a great time to take advantage of exploring the US. Yeah.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Hmm.
And is that what you've had to do, Claire? Have you adjusted your travel, I guess,
I
within the
have.
last since March?
I have. I haven't traveled
Yeah.
internationally for an entire year now. I arrived back from Dubai a year ago, and it's been all domestic travel. And I've really
Mhm.
enjoyed it. I decided last year to check off my final states. I think I had about four left. So I went to West Virginia first. I have a good story to say that I went to West Virginia in June. And so if you remember timeline, that's when uh, um, George Floyd unfortunately passed. And so I thought, should I be going to West Virginia in June right now? But the nice thing is that and I know it's not necessarily like this forever, but I received some great empathy. I had literally two women at two different times who looked at me and asked me if they could buy me lunch. And one she was like my daughter's age. She just had tears in her eyes and said, "Can I please buy you lunch?" And so I've found a lot of like good, kind, kind people in this country too. And when we see the contrasts out there, so I checked off West Virginia, checked off Rhode Island, Kansas on the way to North Dakota. And North Dakota was my final state. And I was with my daughter on a road trip. And in North Dakota, if it's your last state, they have the Best for Last Club. So you go to the Chamber of Commerce and they literally, you join a little club, and it's on the honor system. You don't have to prove that you've been to every 50 state or all 50 states. But they have a sign. You take a picture by the sign. I have a T-shirt that I got to keep. That Best for Last Club. So that they make it fun if you keep that one. But I've really enjoyed domestic travels, and since I work remotely, I decided, well, I could be anywhere, and that's why I've actually decided I'm moving out west to Arizona to be surrounded by the mountains.
And Arizona is a beautiful place indeed.
Mm-hmm.
What impact would you say that your travels have had on you, emotionally, spiritually, mentally? What do you get from travel?
We have an amazing world. I feel fortunate to have experienced so much of it. My favorite have been the human connections. And despite language differences or geographical differences, we do have a lot in common. One of my favorite authors, Brene Brown, says that we're hardwired to be connected. And I feel that. And everywhere I've gone, it's like this human connection. And that's what I've loved the most. Like I really like, in Bhutan, I'll tell you, in Mongolia, I spent an evening in a yurt and just with a Mongolian family. And that was just, it was just being immersed in humanity is what I've enjoyed most. I worked in Maasai land, and I remember at night sitting around the hut with Maasai warriors. To become warriors back then, it was killing a lion. And but around Maasai warriors and even way back, that was a decade ago, but I remember taking pictures and showing them and that joy. And but I feel like as much divisiveness, especially in our country, that we've had, we are innately wired to be connected. We are. And I've felt that so many places around the world. And so it gives me hope for that. And
Well said.
I love that.
And just the gratitude. I'm grateful for, I was listening to an episode of Star Talk. My son likes to listen to Star Talk with Neil deGrasse Tyson. And he was saying how, and it's very technical when you think about it, but the chances that we had as each of us to even exist, when you're talking about, the actual conception and who actually makes it to a human being and who is born, and the chance that we have had to even exist on Earth. Like it's one in a multi-million chance just for us to exist on Earth. And then for me to have experienced so much of it, it just fills me with gratitude. Like I'm just beyond grateful for having this human experience that so many of us never even became human beings.
Wow. I feel like she already answered the next question, Yen. The next question was going to be, what would you say to those of us, I'll put myself in that category, who maybe are fearful of travel, especially international travel, and everything that you're talking about feels so overwhelming. Like I have anxiety as I think about being somewhere where I don't know the language or what have you. What would you say is the reason why they should do it anyway?
Mhm.
I don't know if you have another answer because I feel like you just,
Well,
just
I
like,
feel like people will help you. People will. I'll have a quick story. When my residency director, when I was in residency, she traveled to France with her family, and she has like 6 children. And as they got on the metro, the youngest one, he was like 4 years old. The youngest one, the doors close. He never got in. So they're looking out and watching their 4-year-old, you know, and talk about being young and not knowing. Even if she knew the language, he didn't know it. And so of course they're in a huge panic. And so they get off the train and go back and then go back and they find him standing with this couple who didn't know English and he didn't know French. And they just stood there and they waited. And because they knew somebody was coming for him. And that, I think, so that fortunately in most places in the country, in the world, you'll have that same human interaction. You'll have people who will help you. You'll get through the challenges. And I've realized that so much. I was hiking the Camino de Santiago and I started to go off course and I didn't even realize it. You're supposed to follow the yellow arrows and then the arrows stopped. But there was a farmer and he's yelling at me like, go back that way. And you realize how helpful humans are and beyond any language difference or any experience in the world. So I feel like you just have to take a chance. You start small. You don't have to take a huge chance, or you can pick somewhere that's still heavily traveled by tourists. But it's taking a chance. And I feel like once you start that and you experience something really great, then you'll just want to continue it.
that makes sense.
Wow, it is. It does make sense. And
Mhm.
I think a lot of times, I'm going to go out on the limb and say Americans, that we tend to rely on media to define
Yeah.
countries for
Oh,
us.
yeah.
And they're always not presented in the positive light,
Mhm.
right? And so
Absolutely.
I think instills some fear. If we say let's take a trip to South Africa, you've heard about the violence there, and they're
Mhm.
carjacking individuals,
Yes.
and you
Oh,
start,
believe me, I've
yeah,
had a lot of lectures before I've gone to certain countries. I've had
right,
a like, many lectures on, is it safe? Are you safe? Or safe?
Yeah.
And I'm
yeah,
like, I've done my due diligence. I have contacts. But yeah, a lot of times you get there and it's like, even I went to Myanmar, and granted, it's a whole nother story, but I went to Myanmar, and the blessing is that after going to Myanmar, I had actually decided to go to Bangladesh and help with the Rohingya that had been driven out of Myanmar. But the way that they said it, but the way that you'd think if I arrive there, it's just going to be horrific.
Right.
And even the news going on while I was the day before I arrived in Myanmar and CNN, I thought, oh my gosh, maybe I don't want to go, but I'll take a chance. It was a great trip. It was great. Um, yeah, I think it really, the biggest thing is that as long as you're not searching for trouble, trouble's not searching for you. So if we do our same due diligence that we do in our everyday lives, you're going to be just fine. It's
Mm.
the ones who are on Instagram, like flashing their backside in a Buddhist country, or silly stuff like that. But if you're not going to do any of that, there's a good chance that or you're not going to be searching for something illicit. You're going to be just fine.
Is asking
Ooh. Yes,
artist. You mentioned that it's good to be an American. Is it still?
but I think they still have. I think in general they have empathy for us. Especially the last 4 years. Um, I can tell you the big difference that I was lucky to. Right, I went to President Obama's first inauguration with my children, and I bought tons and tons of souvenirs while I was in DC. And it was a month before my trip to Kenya, and I arrived in Kenya. And they're, you say, where are you from? America, Obama, and they're all about it. And I'm like, here, have this, take this, blah, blah, blah. They were like the Messiah and their little and small little hut with like a Obama sticker on it, and so, yeah, last 4 years when I would say where I was from, woo, I would get an earful.
Oh,
Very, very different experience. And but I would usually say, I don't really want to talk about it. I'm like, I want to talk about it.
Yeah.
So, but I feel like still it was more empathy. I don't think like, I don't feel like they thought I represented, the egregious parts of our nation. I feel like they were like, oh, it's a topic of conversation, but not that it was associated with me. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, it's huge talk. It's huge. Once you say you're from the U.S., it's usually the number one talk of conversation. So, hopefully we're on the mend, and
It'll be interesting to see. I would love to have you back next year this time.
yeah,
yeah.
What the difference has
I
been.
would like that. I'm curious now because again, I especially remember 2 administrations and what the feedback is. So
Right.
I would be fascinated to hear what feedback I would now get in next year.
Yeah, you'll have to definitely test that out and see. So this has been great. We're coming down to the end, but before we let you go, we have to kind of give the people. Although I think you've given them some great nuggets already, but we want to. We have some information that we actually gleaned from your blog. So we put in the comments, guys, the link to her blog, so you can check it out. There's much more information there and lots of great pictures and all kinds of things. Real quick, I wanted to just have you kind of tick off a couple of things in particular, just practical tips that you would offer to those who are watching. I see a lot of people in the comments saying, "Oh, I'm so inspired.
Sure.
I want to travel now." Let's go through some of the sort of just nuts and bolts, some things that will just really kind of help people who are ready to go out there, step out of their comfort zone, to be prepared in the best way possible. So you have information about passports and visa. You talk about
Yes.
like current, of course. You say even 6 months or so out, like you don't want it to be expiring anytime soon.
No,
even, right?
you do not. Your passport needs to have more than 6 months on it. I have read many stories showing up at the airport, and certain, especially specific countries say, if you don't have more than 6 months in your even if you were planning on going for 2 weeks, you can't arrive. You also need to be really, every country's different about visas. So there are visas on arrival, Cambodia, visa on arrival, Vietnam, visa on arrival. Ethiopia, you need your visa ahead of time. Some, they're lengthy visas. So there are ones like Chad. I needed to send in my passport to, not that, Chad is not for tourism, but I had to send in my passport to have it approved. Ghana, but Ghana is a common place to go. So that one you need to have you need to send in your passport. Now that was the same trip. I didn't want to let go. Like, my passport is like golden. I didn't want to let go of my passport for too long. So I actually flew to, my daughter was when she was still an undergrad in Oklahoma. I flew to the Ghana embassy in Houston and got my immediate approval, because I was like, I'm not letting my passport out of my hand another time. But yeah, you have to make sure. And then there are interesting places where that tourism has opened up. Oh, and you'd have to consider it after COVID, but if there's any thought of going to Saudi Arabia, which is actually a beautiful country, they have a new 6-month tourist visa. Did you have a list post for me to run through, or you want me to just?
Okay. Amanda's gonna put it back up. She kind of ran it through it pretty quickly, but there were the other. Let's quickly just talk about packing, because that's whether you're going out of the country or not. You talk about things that we should pack. You mentioned, make sure you have Tylenol and ibuprofen. Consider buying Vet Bond from Amazon, which seals the skin for minor scrapes. That's
yes. Yeah.
Who
So
would have thought?
Dermabond is what surgeons, what I've used in the OR to close skin. And you in general can't get your hands on that, and it's more expensive. But Vet Bond, it's the same thing. So it's like super glue for the skin. So if you happen to have, now you have to kind of use some good judgment that hopefully it hasn't been open too long, or it's not infected. But you can use that to close the skin. Packing, I always like to roll things tightly, and leave a little room so that you can bring things back too.
Right.
Always have everything. I have lost luggage so many times, so always have all of your really critical things with you too. And then you have to know, like, some things you can't, like my drone and my cameras, I can't pack those batteries, and they have to come with me, in case they light up on in the cabin of the. Hopefully that would never happen.
You gave another tip, which I thought was really important for us as women. You said to make sure to bring your own tampons because in
Oh
some countries
yes.
you don't have.
If you are a tampon user, there are or if you happen to need like super or sport, there are many countries you are not going to find those at all. It is not a thing.
Oh, no.
So you
Oh,
are going to have to go back to pads, and like, you're okay with that, but it is not a thing. Or the tampons are like they're like toothpicks. Like, this isn't going to do a darn thing. I'll be good for 5 minutes with this. Um, but an opposite of, speaking of the medications that I suggest you bring with you, like ibuprofen and Tylenol, if you're in a country that has the open pharmacies, I suggest looking in those pharmacies so there are a lot of countries that, like Mexico, and especially in Southeast Asia, they have pharmacies that you don't need a prescription to buy prescription medications. And it's specifically, that's where I get my Retin-A. So I like to use Retin-A at night, just, part of the anti-aging routine. And if you tried to buy that in the US, it could be around $100. But if you buy it in Indonesia or even in Mexico, it could be $5 to $10. So I always like to go into the pharmacies and see what do you have? Or like, ask like, oh, do you want to go souvenir shopping? No, I want to go to a pharmacy. I want to see what's in the pharmacy. I'm bringing stuff back with me.
That is hilarious. Of course, you would think that as a doctor. So good for those of us who wouldn't first.
Right. Yeah. Well, still have to pay for it. So.
You also mentioned something so simple. Two things I remembered was like, oh, that's so smart. Taking the shower caps and use in the hotel and using them to put over your shoes when you're packing them.
Yes. Yeah. I learned that from a friend, Sophia.
Yeah. And then
who's a flight attendant.
For the small like hair products or gels or whatever, like if you have just a contact lens case for those hair products, small amount, that's so smart.
Yes, right. I even like I think everyone should try I know some people they poo-poo Spirit and Frontier and all that stuff, but you can get that down to a cheap. If you just want to do a weekend trip, like I haven't been to San Antonio, I'd love to go to San Antonio. I'll do a personal item, which means one backpack. So I can put in a pair, I can wear a pair of shoes, put in a pair of shoes, roll up some stuff. And then for my liquids, I will take contact lens cases and then put like lotion in them, or, not the hair products, but it's just a weekend. But see, don't pick a seat and just use a personal item. That's a cheap trip.
You can make it work.
And nothing against travel. I don't need to be sitting in first class, or I love upgrades, but I don't need it. I just want to be able, and I feel even more. It's like more rewarding. Like I'm flying to San Antonio for $20. Like that's more rewarding for me than. So I would try. I've done a couple weekend trips with just a backpack. That's it.
Yeah, and wearing layers so you don't have to pack as many things.
Absolutely,
so on people who are cold natured, like me, that would be perfect because it's like, oh, I'm warm and I've got 3 outfits.
Right, planes get cold, put them on. Yeah.
Oh, I love
That's
it.
good stuff. That's good stuff.
It's all really good.
Thank you
It's
so
all
much for all that good
Thank
information,
you. Thanks
for
for having
sharing
me.
your
And thank you,
stories.
Karen. I know you're watching. Thank you, Karen, for introducing me to
Thank you for making this
everyone. Yeah.
absolutely. We definitely need to stay connected, Claire, because I hear more stories and make sure that we can have you back to share what other adventures you've gone on. So
Absolutely. I'd love to.
Yeah.
fantastic.
Okay, so we do have some scripture for today that we'd like to share with everyone. So we can leave with a spiritual note, right?
Yeah.
So the first one is from Second Timothy chapter 1, verse 7. For God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power and love and self-control. Second reading is, but those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. And that's Isaiah 40, chapter 40, verse 31. And the last one reads, I will praise the Lord as long as I live. I will sing praises to God while I have my being. And I think that describes that's
Yeah.
Psalms 146 too. And I love that last verse, especially for what we discussed, because what I really heard in Claire's voice was just living life to the fullest with no regret,
Mm-hmm.
experiencing all of God's beautiful beauty in
Yeah.
people and in land while you have your being,
I
right?
love that. It's so
Yeah,
perfect. And the first one for me too, the verse about not having a spirit of fear, right? And
true,
she said,
true.
just trust and believe in God and in the goodness of
Yeah,
people. And
right.
when you can, as she has gone all over the world and seen the beauty in humanity,
Yes.
it gives me hope as well, and encourages me to consider stepping outside of that comfort zone, living life
Yeah.
to the fullest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely. That was
and
good.
I hope that is what you all feel as well. Those of you who are watching, hopefully you've been inspired to live your life to the fullest also with no fear. That is certainly what we wish for you. So thank you so much, Yin, for being here with me.
My pleasure. My pleasure. It was fun.
It was. And
Mhm.
thank all of you for being here also. We hope you'll join us again next week. I'm so excited to have my girl Paulette back. She's going to check in and let us know how things are going with her health journey. And then the week after, we have a rags to riches Cinderella story of a phenomenal judge from Atlanta. Judge Veronica Cope has a great story, an inspiring story of success, and she's got a little black girl magic. So I'm excited to meet her and introduce her to you all as well. So until
Awesome.
then, hope you have a wonderful week. God bless you, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in today. Be sure to join us next week because Paulette is back to tell us how she's keeping to her health and fitness routine. Get ready to be inspired next week on Hey Girl.